Riley was a student in my choir from 6th grade until he graduated from high school about 10 years ago. He was a little rough around the edges, got in trouble for mouthing off and fighting, and he had aspirations of being a professional hip-hop artist. But he loved singing in choir, and he stayed in choir all throughout high school, even though it really wasn't his kind of music. One day, on Karaoke Friday, he asked if he could perform one of his own raps. I was worried there might be profanity, and there was, but I allowed him to perform because I felt in that moment that it was important to acknowledge that Riley's original work had value. I gave the other students the option of leaving the room, but most stayed. And Riley was so grateful for that opportunity to perform. He's now a professional rapper and entrepreneur in Las Vegas. And he came back to visit my students last year, and he spoke to them about what he learned in choir and about working in the music industry. So I've had many students return to visit throughout the years, but for some reason, I'm especially proud of Riley, and I think it's because his style of music, hip hop, was not a genre we ever performed in choir. I mean, would you really want to hear a choir perform hip hop? But I also regret that I didn't give Riley and the other students more freedom to create and share their own work. There were just concerts and competitions and music theory to focus on, and there just wasn't ever time. My name is Kathleen Alviar, and I teach music here at the American School of Kinshasa in the Democratic Republic of Congo. I want to thank you all for being here today and for this opportunity. I have to admit, when I ventured into international teaching, I anticipated new experiences, but giving a TED Talk was not on my bingo card. At first, I was apprehensive, still kind of am, actually, and I wondered what I could possibly say that hadn't already been said in a more eloquent or clever way. But then, after taking a breath, I realized I already had a topic that I've been ranting about for years to anyone who would listen. So it's probably no surprise to you that I believe in the power of music education to not only transform lives, but sometimes to save them. This deeply held conviction comes not only from research and statistics, which overwhelmingly confirm the benefit of music education, but also from my own lived experience. I grew up in what was considered by US standards an economically disadvantaged household. My dad was in prison for most of my life. And my mom, sister, and I got by on public financial assistance. But Mom always made sure we went to church every Sunday. And so my earliest memories of music are traditional hymns and the dramatic and ominous pipe organ, what we might call classical music. And it makes sense that classical music continued to resonate with me throughout my life. But outside of music, I struggled academically, getting C's and D's, and even failing a few classes in high school. Despite these challenges, music was my refuge. And on stage, whether I was singing or playing the piano, I not only thrived, but was regarded as a leader. It's fair to say, in fact, that were it not for music education, I likely would have not attended college and certainly wouldn't have a career that I am grateful for every moment. Performing in front of audiences allowed me to approach interviews and speaking engagements like this one with confidence. Practicing for hours each day taught me self-discipline and the intrinsic reward that comes from hard work paying off. Being a section leader in choir taught me the importance of leading by example and the power of teamwork. And overall, the performing arts gave me a sense of belonging. But it's worth noting that music education has changed very little since I graduated barely in 1988, and that's problematic. I fear that if we do not adapt to a changing technological and cultural landscape, it may cease to be relevant in the lives of today's students, or possibly cease to exist altogether in any meaningful way. Music classrooms today look very similar to music classrooms from decades or even centuries ago. In 2019, researcher Robert Cudietta noted in the College Music Symposium that although music education prepares students to be part of a traditional band, orchestra, or choir, it often does little to align with how we interact with music in contemporary society. My students are often shocked when I tell them that I listen to rock and pop, and yes, even rap, way more than I listen to opera or symphonic music. Similarly, Professor Anitia Gonzalez-Ben noted in the Philosophy of Music Education Journal in 2022 that in most countries, music education remains heavily Eurocentric, even as the performing arts have become more diverse and cross-cultural. Now, that's not to say that young people don't enjoy classical music, but it represents a small fraction of the world's musical offerings, yet receives outsized emphasis in our music programs. Now, it's easy to fall into the trap of assuming we adults know what young people need. We tend to describe them in overly simplistic terms like Gen Z, or Gen Alpha, or Gen Beta, as if they were astrology signs. But young people are not a monolith, and although students in one community may welcome traditional band, choir, orchestra opportunities, students in another community may be more interested in music production or film and game scoring. I simply hold that the voices of young people must be at the forefront of these discussions. Which brings me to the survey that several TASOC students completed at my request. I honestly wasn't sure what the results would reveal, but I'd like to share some of them with you. The good news is that 26% of students described their elementary music experience as excellent, and nearly 46% of students as satisfactory, noting they would make some changes, begging the question, what kind of changes? Well, several students indicated an interest in composition and songwriting and learning instruments associated with popular music, not just traditional band instruments. Other students wanted to collaborate more, and they wanted to introduce more multicultural music. But here's something to consider. Many people mistakenly believe that we music teachers just get to teach whatever we want. And although we do have some freedom, where song and project choices are concerned, our curriculum is also informed by a set of music standards that have been developed and have been adopted by a particular region or school to ensure academic consistency. For example, many American international schools have adopted the Arrow Project standards, which emphasize musical literacy, composition, performance, and to some degree, cultural competency. They're really solid standards, but a glance at the Arrow website confirms what I suspected. Although educators from 17 international schools met to adopt the standards, no students were involved, or if they were, their involvement is not noted or credited. So here's my call to action. First, to music teachers. We cannot afford to let apathy and nostalgia blind us to the reality of a changing world that is hungry for innovative thinking. We need to be involved where the top-tier decisions are made and advocate for student voices to be included in those decisions. We need to set our own egos aside, as well as our insatiable need for approval from our peers. The fear of professional judgment is a powerful deterrent to innovative thinking. But most importantly, to the students, I encourage you to take an interest in the performing arts at your school, even if it's not your thing. And if it's not, ask yourself why. Is it because you genuinely don't like music? That's fair. Or is it because the way that music has been taught has little relevance to your life? If this is true, then I urge you to mobilize your peers, ask questions, and share your ideas. Because even if music isn't your thing, I promise you, it is somebody's thing. And that person needs somebody to advocate for the arts, so they are not denied the same opportunities that changed the trajectory of my life and allowed me to be here with you today. Thank you.